Brian. I want to ask you about Adoree. And when you have a corner playing at the level he's at, what does that do? How important is that for your guys' defense?
It's important. He's really done a good job since we've been here. I think he's bought into what we're trying to do. I think he's had a really good camp, and that's led into a strong start to the season. I have a lot of confidence in him, and glad he's part of our team.
And just specifically, like the way you guys are going to play with so much pressure and so aggressive, I mean, you really can't do that probably if your corners aren't capable of playing on an island. Like some systems you can maybe hide a corner. It feels like here you probably can't.
Yeah, I think Wink does a good job, though, Dan, of mixing up. There's a variety of ways to pressure. I know as Wink has talked to you about, you could bring only 4 guys and consider it a pressure and, do different things on the back end in terms of your coverage systems. I think Wink does a good job of mixing that up, and Adoree's been, a very dependable player for us.
Patty Traina.
Hi, Coach. How are you?
Good, Patty. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about the start of the game, the last 2 weeks. The offense has kind of gotten off to a slow start as compared to the second half of the games. What can you do to maybe expedite things a little bit, get them going on a faster tempo, and just kind of be more productive as far as scoring opportunities?
Yeah, that's an important part of the game for us is trying to get off to a fast start. That doesn't always happen. The last 2 games are the only 2 games to go by in terms of the regular season. So, we'll continue to work at that and, put together some good openers. And, it takes everybody, the coaching, the playing, everybody. And, our guys are, something we'll work on.
Is it possible that you might consider like an up-tempo or like a no-huddle offense to kind of jumpstart things?
I think we try to do, we go into the week and the game trying to put together the best plan we can, Patty. And, I think the offensive coaches do a really good job. Again, we haven't had the results that we're hoping for, but I believe in the process and the preparation that those guys do. And, we'll continue to try to do a better job at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom Rock.
Brian, I know you've been talking about competition and that leading to playing time and the way players are used in the games since training camp. A lot of coaches talk about that. Not a lot of coaches actually follow through on it. It seems like sometimes they just throw everybody out there the way things were. Do you think that the players believed you before this season started that that's the way you were going to treat things? And 2, is it difficult for the players to accept that kind of role?
I think those are 2 good questions. I think they're best questions for those guys. All we try to do is the very best we can as a coaching staff, and we have high standards in terms of going out there, preparing well, practicing well, and each week is a different week. I know we talked about this yesterday, and the receivers, Slay, he was active but had a few reps, and Kenny didn't have a lot. And if you look on the defensive side, and sometimes it's planned. Calitro had 5, and the previous week, I don't know, he had 40 plus. So, we'll try to do what we think is best for our football team. I think that's the most important. I think you just are open and honest with the players, Tom, of what their role is, what they need to do to improve, and let those guys go out there and compete it off each week. Again, we're kind of at the introductory stages of our program and what we're trying to do, and I think competition is the best thing for everybody.
When you make a decision, Brian, when it pertains to one of the highest paid players on the team, do you have to check above you to make that call? I'm talking about Kenny, obviously. Did you have to check with Joe or John and make sure that that's okay?
Yeah, well, Joe and I, collaborate on pretty much everything in our building. I bounce ideas off of him. He bounces ideas off of us. I think the thing that we want to create is a competitive team as we can, and regardless of, again, where you're drafted, how you got here, how much money you make, we believe in, everybody goes out there and competes, and we play the guys that earn the right to play that week.
Thanks, Brian.
You got it.
Brian Dunleavy.
Hey, Brian, I got two for you.
Okay.
First, any Leonard Williams update?
Yeah, it's his knee, but it's better than it could be. So he's in day-to-day. He said he feels a lot better than he did yesterday. He's walking around. So we'll just, we'll take it like we normally do with all these things each day. And, hopefully he's a fast healer.
So that day-to-day means?
Day-to-day.
Okay. And then another defensive question for you. I guess two parts. What did you think of the way Dane Belton played? And then how did his play, I guess, allow you to do some different things defensively with McKinney and Love? You mentioned Calitro only playing 5 spots. It almost seemed like you had one of your safeties playing inside linebacker. So how did Belton play, and what did that do for the rest of the defense? Yeah,
it was good to have him out there. I thought he played fast, Ryan. It was good to his first NFL play, and he recovered a fumble there on the kickoff. He's been a guy, as a young player, that's been right in the back hip of those guys when he was injured, and you could tell his preparation paid off. Just like a lot of the guys, there's certain things he can improve on, like all of us, but I thought he played fast. It was good to have him out there in terms of, the defensive packages. I think that's something each week, you go into a game offensively, look at things, what do you like to do, how do you like to match up, and we certainly do that there, and Wink does a great job along with the defensive staff of figuring out, what we think we need to do for that particular week. So for this week, it was good relative to how Carolina played, the weapons that they had, and the matchups we thought were, in favor of us if we played it a certain way.
Thanks.
You got it.
Paul Schwartz.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, I got two for you as well.
Sure.
First of all, a bunch of your players in the locker room, and you said it before, they said one of the keys to this team is we're not afraid of failure. I'm not 100% sure what that means. And are there examples of that you coached in yesterday's game that show us that you're not afraid of failure? Well,
I think that you can get bogged down in this league pretty quick by, making a mistake and not let it linger into the next play and to the next play. The other thing I think for play callers is, you put together a plan, you prepare during the week, you explain it to the players, and then when you get into that situation, I've been there before, you're like, boy, should I really call this? And I think Mike and, I think that was a great example at the end of the game there with the pass play that Mike called and then put it in DJ's hands, which we really had good communication from Mike, to the quarterback. Again, that was discussed probably a couple plays before. He knew the play he wanted to go to. And then, those two plays, back-to-back plays where Tony Jefferson made the tackle on Christian McCaffrey, which was a great play. I mean, one of the plays of the game that allowed us to get to third down and, get that sack with Julian. Pretty aggressive play calls, I would say, both on Mike's end and on Wink's end. So, again, I want them to be themselves, play fast, play free, move on to the next play. We all make mistakes. I'm probably the leader of that. And, once you make them, don't let it linger. Move on to the next play. Next step is the most important one.
Would an example of that, tell me if I'm on the mark with this or not, is, about not maybe worrying about the consequences and, have the conviction. You call for Gary Brightwell on 3rd and 1, right? Mike makes that call. Saquon's in the backfield.
Yeah.
So if Gary Brightwell drops the ball or gets stopped for no gain, it's easy for me to come to you and say, just give it to Saquon. Isn't that the easy thing to do? Why do you give it to the guy who's got one career, rush? Yep. So is that also like, I'm not afraid to fail in that situation because I believe in this play?
Yeah, I think, Paul, again, our job as a coaching staff is to, do the very best we can to prepare those guys and put plays in that we think are going to work. You're never sitting up there at night, drawing up a play going, boy, let's call this play. We only got probably about a 10% chance to hit it. You spend a lot of time on it. Do they all work? Absolutely not. There's been times where, let's just call it a gadgety play or a trick play or maybe something that's a little bit unique that I've called that it hasn't worked. And you can't worry about the criticism that you're going to get with it if you believe in that play and you think that's the right thing. And that happens quite a bit. but you have to, again, have conviction in it. That's why you're putting the play in or the defense in or the special teams play in. And, you just don't, pick it out of a hat. You work at it. You evaluate it. You practice it. There's been times where you think it's going to work. You go out there and practice it a couple times during the week, and by Friday night or Friday after practice, you're throwing it away. So that's the job of the coaching staff. That's what we'll always try to do here. I'm pleased with how those guys prepare and the preparation that they put in, much like the players.
Thanks.
You got it.
We'll take 4 more. Bob Brookover.
Hey, Brian. How difficult is it as a play caller when you're not having success with a run to stick with it in the second half? And how would you evaluate Saquon's game yesterday? I mean, obviously it wasn't the same numbers as the first game, but in many ways it was still very effective.
Yeah, that's always a challenge. And again, I think it just depends on, what you're trying to get accomplished. Obviously, Saquon is a big part of what we do and what we want to do. And, when you go into half and there's 8 carries for 0 yards, I just put myself in Mike's shoes. And you're going, phew, we've gotten 0 yards on 8 plays. But, Saquon's one of our best players. And again, the running game in this league is not always pretty. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 0. Maybe they're doing different things that they're getting in the backfield and hitting us for a couple losses. But again, I think kind of how the game's flowing, Bob, that dictates some of the things. We were in a close, contested, back and forth game. The big thing for us, obviously, how that game was going is let's take care of the ball and let's continue to feed 26. And a couple of those runs you saw later that got hit for a -1, squirted around the corner off the edge for a big play, and then he had another one. So he's certainly a guy that is important to our offense. And is it tough at times when you're not gaining yards? Sure, I'd say particularly as the play caller. But again, that falls back on your preparation plan and your commitment to the players, particularly your really good ones.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tom Canavan.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Tom.
How hard is it when Leo gets hurt? It seemed like you just flipped the defense to a more nickel and dime package. I mean, how hard is that to do it? Like you went with 2 linemen almost the rest of the way.
I think that just is a credit to the coaching staff. Again, being prepared for really, you got to have contingency plans when things come up and adjust and communicate it on the sideline. And, that's a strength, I'd say, of Winks and the defensive staff. I'd like to say that's a strength of all our coaches. Have a lot of confidence in that regard. And on top of that, it's the next man up mentality. So every person on our roster is important, from the practice squad players to the backups to the starters, because you never really know, Tom, during a game what you're going to need. And that's why, their preparation throughout the week is really important in terms of being a pro, understanding the game plan. And then when they have an opportunity, like I just say Ox, we talked about him last week. He's had his opportunities, and he's made the most of them. Now, he was the backup guy, and he's behind Thibodeau and Z's and all that stuff, and all that guy did is work his tail off all off season. And I think, he's reaping, some of the stuff that he's done. And, that's how you want all your players to be.
Kim Jones.
Hey, Dabes, it's Kim. Can you hear me okay?
I got you. How you doing?
I'm just going back to Tom Rock earlier in the call when he asked about Galladay, the contract and everything. Have you felt the need, or has John Mara approached you to ask about, playing time for one of the higher paid players on your roster? Yeah. Even though I know you did not bring him with you. He was here when you got here. But have you had that conversation with John at all?
Yeah, well, I'd say this. I'd just go back. Joe and I talk about a lot of things. Mr. Mara's been great. in terms of, Joe and I have kind of handled a lot of the football things. Obviously, you're going to have communication with your ownership group on a lot of different things, and we certainly do. I think we have a good relationship in terms of communication. But again, whether it's the highest paid player, the lowest paid player, the highest draft pick, an undrafted free agent, we're just going to go out there and let the guys compete it out. And 1 week doesn't necessarily mean this is what's going to happen the next week. So I think everybody understands, what we're trying to do as an organization in terms of, continue to get better, competing for spots, working as hard as you can work. And, that's, again, I'll just say, like, David Sills has done a good job. He's done a good job, and he's earned some of this playing time, and each week's a competition.
Last one here, Art Stapleton.
Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Good, Art. How are you?
Good. You mentioned it with your answer to Paul a little bit. I'm just curious, the way offense has evolved in this league, is there really such a thing as a gimmick or a gadget anymore in offenses in the NFL? And how have you adjusted to that idea of, no play is too gimmicky or too cute with the way you guys want to run things?
Well, I would say that, if there's a good play out there that we can research, it's worth our time to research. Calling gadget-type plays, I think there's a time and a place for them. It makes the defense defend the whole field. And I would say if, I was down the street at a high school game and saw a good, cool looking play, I would research it. There's a lot of good coaches in this profession, starting with, little youngsters to high school to college and the pros. And the minute you think you have all the answers because, you're coaching the National Football League, that'll get you real quick. I think be open-minded, do as much research as you can. And if you think a play is going to give you an advantage, regardless of special teams or offense or defense, then you owe it to the players to do that research. And if you believe in it and you think it's going to work, then you call it.